Buying a share in an aircraft can be a great way to make flying more accessible, but there's quite a bit to think about beyond just the price. I've now bought 2 shares in 2 aircraft, a Cessna 172 and more recently the Skyranger Nynja, and there are a few things that became much clearer going through that process. So in this video I'm going to walk you through what I've learnt and what I'd be looking for if I was doing this again. And before getting into the detail, it's worth asking, is a share actually right for you and how you fly? Because how often you fly and what you want from it can make a big difference. Hi, I'm Dale and this is Left Seat Culture, a channel about flying gear and the culture of aviation. Most of what I cover is general aviation, but hopefully it's of interest to all pilots, whatever you fly. So the first thing to understand is you're not just buying into an aircraft, you're buying into a group of people. And in many ways, that's one of the most important parts of buying a share in an aircraft. No two groups are the same. Some are very relaxed, whereas some are more structured. So it's really about finding one that fits how you want to fly. In terms of buying a share, these are the things that I'd be looking at. How many members are there in the group? How easy is it to book aircraft? And how do people communicate? Such as, is there a WhatsApp group or something more structured? Because what you're really trying to understand is, how easy is it going to be to actually use the aircraft? One thing that comes with being in a group is shared responsibility for that aircraft. It's not like renting when you just kind of hand the keys back and that's it. You have a part in owning the aircraft. So for example, in the Cessna group I'm in, there's a real emphasis on leaving the aircraft in a good condition. Things like cleaning it down after a flight, cleaning off the flies and just making sure it's ready for the next person. This can be a small thing, but it makes a big difference to how the group works overall. There's also obviously positive sides to being in a group. You've got the opportunity to fly with others, share trips, and obviously also split the costs. You don't have to, but ideally the group has a similar mindset, so that option is there. It's also worth checking whether there's a formal group agreement in place, something that sets out how things work, how costs are shared, and how decisions are made. Because in most cases, issues don't come from the aircraft, they come from misunderstandings within a group. So next thing to talk about obviously is the costs. Typically you'll see a few things: the buy-in price, a monthly fee and an hourly rate. But it's worth digging into the costs a little bit deeper. For example, is the hourly rate wet or dry? Is there an engine fund included? And are maintenance costs also shared? And importantly, are there any less obvious costs? In my case, with the Skyranger Nynja, there's also a couple of additional things. There's an annual social fee for the club where it's based, and because it's a microlight, there's also membership with the British Microlight Aircraft Association. These aren't huge individually, but they're easy to overlook and perhaps not obvious if you've not bought a share in an aircraft before. It's also worth saying that buying a share in an aircraft isn't purely a financial decision. It really is going to depend on how often you fly and what it is that you want from it. Because the share only makes sense if it matches your actual usage. And like any ownership, there can be unexpected costs from time to time, and that's just part of how things work. Then obviously there is the aircraft itself. A few things I'd also want to understand when buying a share in an aircraft. What is the maintenance history? What are the engine hours? And obviously the overall condition. And importantly, it's really trying to understand what comes next for the aircraft. Are there any upgrades, any servicing? Is there any big cost on the horizon that the group isn't expecting? Perhaps it's an engine overhaul. Also, it's good to understand a few other things in terms of maintenance. Where is maintenance carried out? Is it local to where the aircraft is hangared, or does it have to be flown somewhere else for maintenance? Because again, all of these things affects downtime of the aircraft. And often the condition of the aircraft reflects the group, how it's looked after and how issues are handled. Good maintenance isn't just about safety, it also protects the value of your share. Where the aircraft is based matters more than you might think. Is it easy to get to? Because if it's not convenient, you're probably not going to use it as much. Also, is the aircraft hangared inside or is it kept outside? Hangars usually means a higher cost, but better protection for the aircraft. Outside of a hangar can be cheaper, but then there's more wear and tear over time. Insurance is another key area. What is the excess on the insurance? Who pays those insurance excesses in the event of damage? Are there any experience minimum requirements for the insurance? The reason I say this is some groups require a minimum hours as pilot in command or a minimum amount of hours on type. So it's worth checking that you meet those before committing to buying a share in the aircraft. Booking of the aircraft is also a big one on a day-to-day basis. Is there a proper system for booking? Is it web-based or is there also an app? For example, in one of my groups we use Gaboko. This has both a website and an app and it works really well. In the other one they use Slot, which is more of a basic web-based kind of booking system. Both work, but the experience is different in both of them in terms of how you use them, make your booking and see availability. One thing worth calling out is group size doesn't always tell the full story about buying a share in an aircraft. The Cessna group I'm in has 14 members, where the Skyranger group has 20 shares with about 18 of them being active. But in both cases, availability has actually been really good. Because in most groups, not everybody flies regularly, and obviously that helps with availability, especially if you have the ability to fly in the week as opposed to just being restricted to weekends. So that's also something worth asking when you're inquiring on joining a group. When do people typically fly? Because obviously demand is usually highest at the weekend because people typically have a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. However, like me, if occasionally you can fly midweek, availability is often much better. And in the UK at least, I've often found the weather is more of a limiting factor than aircraft availability anyway. Each group obviously has its own rules. This comes down to kind of booking limits, minimum hours, currency requirements, as well as those that the CAA or other regulated body might have as well. Some are very structured, whereas some groups are a lot more relaxed. But generally, those rules are there to keep things fair and to also avoid friction within the group. And finally, something that's obviously quite easy to overlook is how do you get out of the share when the time comes? Selling a share isn't always as simple as just listing it on a website or Facebook or in some flying group. There may be group rules, such as approval of new members, agreements on selling of a price, and the order of selling if multiple people have a share for sale. In some cases, it's more flexible and can be as simple as it would be if like selling a house. And in well-run groups, shares can often sell quite quickly. But ideally, the process is clearly defined up front, so you know what you're getting into. Because you're not just selling an asset, you're introducing a new member into the group. For me, now having been involved in 2 different aircraft groups, the biggest takeaway I have is this. There is no perfect setup. It's about understanding the trade-offs and finding what works for you. A share sits somewhere between renting and full ownership, giving you more access and involvement, but with some of those shared constraints. And ultimately, it's not purely about cost. It's more about access to the aircraft, availability of the aircraft, and the overall experience of flying. If the group works well and the setup suits how you fly, it can be a really good option. And perhaps I've just been lucky that both of the groups I'm in meet all of those criteria. So a question to you, have you flown in a group aircraft or considered buying a share? Share your stories below, I'd love to hear them. Of course, if you found this video useful, give it a like and consider subscribing to Left Seat Culture for more GA insights, flying tips and trips. And as usual, if you want to carry on the discussion, please consider joining the Discord group. There is a link in the description. I look forward to seeing you there. Thanks very much for watching, and if I'm lucky, I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.